Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Today Guruji talks about conquering the world. When we look at most human beings, they are slaves to the world. They are slaves to greed, to ego. They are slaves to lust. And when we think about it, Guru Nanak Dev Ji tells us, Man jeete, jag jeet. When you conquer your mind through spirituality, then you truly conquer the world. Conquering your mind is just as difficult, if not 10 times harder, than conquering the world. Let's look at examples. Napoleon came. He conquered everything, but where did he end up in the end? He was kicked out of his own country. He lost it in a minute. If we think about a very horrible case, look at the killer Adolf Hitler. He conquered so many countries. Wherever he would go, people would salute him out of fear. His one word could put millions to death. His one order could take a life away in a second. Everyone feared him. He had money, he had powers, he had armies. He, in his hatred and greed and evil, pure evilness, the absence of love in his heart made him stone-hearted. And what did he do? He conquered so many, enslaved so many beautiful souls. But he himself ended up a slave. He was a slave to his own mind. He was a slave to fear. He took his own life. And today, remembering his name, people still take his name with a great sense of distaste, and which they should. So when we look at his deeds, and we see here's one guy who conquered a lot of Europe. He was able to conquer armies. He was able to conquer many men. But he himself was conquered by this world, by materialism, by hatred, by anger. Over here, I would like to tell a story of two different souls. One is Saint Dhruv and one is Alexander the Great. When we think of them, they both, now where these two souls meet, it's interesting. I took a class in my college on Alexander the Great, and the story of Bhagat Dhruv I learned from my background, my Punjabi background. And when I thought about their lives, I realized they had the same thing happen to them. When Alexander was young, his father got remarried, and the new wife had a son, which was a threat to Alexander the Great's throne. When Bhagat Dhruv was young, he went to sit in his father's lap, but his stepmother kicked him out and put her son there in his place. So the same thing happened, the same situation. Both did not want to lose the throne. Both of them went to their mothers. Alexander's mother, who some sources have described as conniving, she put a seed of anger and jealousy in her son, and to this day many sources say that she had something to do, or Alexander had something to do, with the death of his stepmother and his stepbrother. When we look at Bhagat Dhruv's mom, he asked her, "Mother, why was I kicked out of my father's lap?" And the mother said, "I was once a queen, but my karma was bad. I did not meditate on God. That's why I live like a slave. You, son, don't live like a slave to this world. You meditate on God." So look at the two different paths. Alexander grew up, and just about every single source says he had a drinking problem. He conquered the whole world, but his mind was still enslaved. Alexander the Great, he had a friend, Ephestoron, and when he died, Alexander couldn't take it, and he got sick, and the seed of jealousy. One day, someone told Alexander the Great, "You know you're nothing, your father, King Philip, was better." And that inner jealousy led to a fight. And after that, Alexander the Great's life slowly came to an end. And when we look at the other side, we see Saint Dhruv. He meditated. One day he got ego in his mind too. And he said, "I'm going to go back and take the kingdom." But luckily on the way he met a spiritual teacher. And the teacher told him laughingly, "You're going to take the kingdom? First break my stick." And when he couldn't, he realized he should meditate more. Now, ultimately, what happened was Saint Dhruv got closer to God by meditation, to the point where the kingdom was just as good as ashes. And all the wealth that Alexander the Great had, too, it was just as good as ashes. There's a book, the Alexander Legends. It talks about Alexander the Great, and it says that when he died, he had 3 wishes. He said, 1, "I wish my funeral procession be surrounded by doctors." 2, "I wish that coins be thrown." And 3, "I wish that I become buried with my hands up in the air." And when asked the reasons, Alexander the Great said, "What I regret in my life is one thing, and that is the path I have taken and where I have ended up." And he said, "I want the doctors to walk with me in the procession because I want the world to know that when it's time for a person to go, you may have the most skilled doctors, but death is gonna come when it comes. Nothing is in the hands of anyone." And the second wish, Alexander the Great said, "I wish the gold coins to be thrown around me because I want people to know these are nothing. I wasted my whole life and lost everything chasing these coins. And now what good are they? And I wish my hands to be pointing up when I am buried so that everyone would know I had everything. I conquered the world. But in the end, death conquered me, and I go empty-handed." And when we look at Threw's ending, not only did his father call him back to lead the kingdom, but he became one with God. He conquered death, and he conquered the world. So here, we look at people, and all these great people, though physically they conquered the world, they were such slaves to their own mind. So how can we conquer this mind? And doing so, conquer materialism, conquer the material world? Here's the Hukam explaining it. Nanak gyani jag jita sab koi. Gyani, a person who has great spiritual knowledge, a person who's in tune with God. O Nanak, the spiritually wise, they conquer the world even though the world has conquered everyone. The world has conquered everyone, but those who love God conquer the world. Name karaj siddh hai, saje hoye so hoye. And it is through the Nam, it is through meditating on God, that all of one's affairs, all of one's problems, they all become still. Everything gets taken care of, and a person obtains an inner state of saj, of harmony. They understand that everything goes in God's will. They learn to love God's will and let whatever will happen, happen. Gurmat mat achal hai, chalai na sake koi. Gurmat, it is through the teachings of God, the great Guru, that a person's mind can remain steady. It doesn't go after materialness. And that type of person who is attached to God, so much may come, lust, anger, greed, ego, and attachment, but that person does not spill. So that type of person never wavers, never spills. Bhakta ka har अंगीकार करे कारज सुहावा होए. Such a beautiful line. Bhagta, the word bhagat means devotee, and a devotee has certain qualities. Bhagat in Punjabi is made of 3 letters, Babba, Gaga, and Tatta. Bhagat means bow and bow, love of God and surrenderance to God, respectful fear of God, fear of sin. Gaga means Gyan. God's saint isn't in blind faith, but God's saint has divine knowledge, divine spirituality in them. And Tatta is Tyag, or giving up, a spirit of sacrifice, a spirit of sharing with others and giving up from oneself. So these 3 qualities are the qualities of a saint. And God makes his saint part of himself. Angikar. Ang means part. Karaj suhava hove. And that saint's life becomes beautiful. God makes all his affairs beautiful. That saint that belongs to God. We were just talking about conquering the world. But if you read in Gurbani, it says that God is the most powerful, but there's one thing in the world that is more powerful than God, and that is the person who loves God. Sabko tere vas agama gochara, tu bhagtan ka vas. Everything's in your power, O unreachable God, but you are in the power of those who love you. So that's something to remember as well. Manmukh, Mulhu, Pulayan, Vich, Lab, Lob, Ahankar. Those who follow their minds, they are making a great mistake, and inside them is greed and ego. Chagra kardya andin, gudra shabad na kare vichar. They spent their whole days arguing. They spend their days arguing over greed, arguing over ego, and they do not reflect upon the Shabad, upon the Naam. Sudh mat karte hir lay bolan sab vikar. God has not given those people intellect, and their speech is horrible, corrupted. Ditte kitte na santokhiyan antar trishna bahut agyan andar. Inside such people, no matter what they are given, they still want more. Their inner thirst never ends, and they have the darkness of ignorance inside them. Nanak manmukha nalo tutiya pali jinmaya moho pyar. O Nanak, those people who are attached to materialism, it is best to stay away. So here Guruji is telling us, keep the company of the holy. You are the company you keep. Mahala Tija. Tine po sansa kya kare jin satgur sir kartar. So such people, they are full of fear and doubt because they don't have the knowledge of God in them. But those people who have given themselves to God, who God has made his own, what can fear and doubt do to them? Tur tin ki paj rakhda ape rakhanhar. That God who has taken care of everyone, who has saved everyone's honor from the beginning, He shall save the honor of those who love Him, those who have given themselves to Him. Mil pritam sukh paya sache shabad vichar. When those people meet their beloved God, they find peace, and they meet God by meditating on the Naam, and through meditating on God, they find the greatest happiness. Nanak Sukhdata Sevya Ape Parkhanhar. O Nanak, I always serve God who's the giver of peace. He himself, Parkhna means to take the weight of something, to test something. And those who God loves, God judges them by His own scale. And what is God's scale? Jo sharan aave, tis kanth lave. Those who come to God's protection, God hugs them in His embrace. Pauri. Ji jan sab tereya, tu sabna ras. O God, everyone, everything is yours, and you are the wealth of all. Jisnu tu de tis sab kich mile, koi hor sarik nahi tud paas. God, that person to who you give, they obtain everything in the world. They're the happiest. And God, there's no sarik. Sarik means equal. There's no one in the world equal to you, O wonderful Lord. So no one is equal to God, but greater than God is the one who loves God, because God loves the devotee back. And just like a child and their parents, the child may be smaller, not as powerful, but still parents run around getting what the child asks for. The same way God's devotee may be smaller, but the love that the devotee has for God makes the devotee in a bigger position of power, because Gobind pao pagat ka pukha. God's hunger is the love of His devotees. Tu eko data sabzda har pair das. God, you are the giver of all. In front of you I make my prayer. Jis di tud pave, tis di tu man lehe, so jan sabas. And that person who pleases you, God, you accept them in your arms, and they are so blessed, so honored. Sab tera choj vartda. This whole world we see, God, it's all your play, your wondrous drama. Dukh sukh tud paas. And my prayer is this, that I put my pain and pleasure in front of you, God. I give it all to you. I let go and hold on to you. So if you want to conquer the world, then fall at God's feet and love God, because the world is in God's hand. And once you love God, God is in your hands. God becomes yours. So loving devotional worship conquers all. Waheguru Ji ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji ki Fateh.